Hey guys, Jim here with another video for you. This is 50 Years in Film, 2014. But before we begin, at the end of this video, if you like what you see, please consider giving me a thumbs up, a possible subscribe, but most importantly, please leave those comments below. I would love to hear from you, what you feel about the films from this year, what films you think I should add to my collection, the whole 9 yards. Now, before we begin, we're going to start with the normal caveat. This is not all of the films from 2014. Far from it. These are simply the films that I own in my collection. And this is also not a countdown of any kind or a ranking video. This is simply just a recap of some of the films that came out in that year. And we do have quite a few this year. Not as many as last year, but we do have quite a bit. So we're just going to jump right into it. We're going to jump around in genre like we always do. And we're going to start off with animation. And the first one on the list is Big Hero 6 from Disney. Very popular movie. To be honest, I've never watched it, but I've heard nothing but good things about it. But I have seen this one, and I love it. The Lego Movie. Starring the voices of Chris Pratt, Morgan Freeman, Elizabeth Banks, Will Arnett. Directed by Phil Lord and Christopher Miller. When I heard that they were making a Lego movie, I thought it was the dumbest thing I had ever heard and the biggest cash grab I had ever heard. I was so wrong. Not to pardon my pun, but everything is awesome about this movie, because it is. It's a great, great, great film. Now we're going to switch over to comedy, if you want to call it that. We're going to start with A Million Ways to Die in the West. Written and directed by Seth MacFarlane. And starring Seth MacFarlane, Charlize Theron, Liam Neeson, and Neil Patrick Harris. This is, without a doubt, one of the worst movies in my entire collection. I covered this on a video of why do I own these terrible movies, and I stand by it. This movie is horrible. And then we go to Neighbors, starring Seth Rogen, Zac Efron, and Rose Byrne. And this one is directed by, who directed this? Nicholas Stoller. Very funny movie. I like this movie a lot. Same thing with this one. I really like this one too. 22 Jump Street, the sequel to 21 Jump Street, of course. And again, starring Jonah Hill, Channing Tatum, and Ice Cube. And this movie, yeah, it's great. Oh yeah, also directed by Lord and Miller, the same guys that did the Lego Movie. The first movie was such a great parody of cop films. This one is such a great parody of sequels. Yeah, both of those movies are just so much fun. Now we're switching over to drama. The first one on the list is The Imitation Game, starring Benedict Cumberbatch, Keira Knightley. This is based on a true story about the invention of the Enigma machine. And one of the main, Alan Turing, who was mainly directly responsible for the invention of that, was a closeted homosexual. And back then, of course, you know, that was definitely not looked upon positively. And it's a very good movie. Benedict Cumberbatch is excellent in this movie. Then we have Nightcrawler, starring Jake Gyllenhaal, Rene Russo, Bill Paxton, and Riz Ahmed. And this one is directed by Tony Gilroy, I believe. Let me double check that. I'm sorry, Dan Gilroy. Great movie. Excellent movie. If you've never seen Nightcrawler, do yourself a favor. Jake Gyllenhaal, I think this is probably, if not his best performance, it's definitely in the top 3. I mean, he is fantastic in this movie. Then we have Whiplash, starring Miles Teller, and in his Academy Award-winning performance for Best Supporting Actor, J.K. Simmons. And this one is written and directed by Damien Chazelle. I'm a drummer. I haven't picked up a pair of drumsticks in years, but once a drummer, always a drummer. And I could relate to a lot of this movie as far as the drive that is necessary to be one of the best. And I've had some pretty hard-ass instructors before, but nothing like Darth Vader here. But my God, is he good in this. Both of them are fantastic in this movie. Even if I wasn't a drummer, I would love this movie. Now we're switching gears. We're back to my Hobbit collection with the third installment, The Hobbit, The Battle of the Five Armies. Starring the same cast, directed by Peter Jackson again. Last movie in the trilogy. Again, I don't like these movies. Then, now we're switching over to like the young adult based material. And we're back to the Hunger Games with the third installment, Mockingjay Part 1. And as usual, anytime it comes to a book series, they get to the last book and they got to split it in two. And that's what they did with this one. Directed by Francis Lawrence, starring Jennifer Lawrence and the whole crew. As I said in the previous videos, I have not seen these films. Continuing that train, we have The Maze Runner, starring Dylan O'Brien, and who else is in this? I forget the other kid. Will Poulter, who was in Midsommar. This one is directed by Wes Ball, who is the director of the new Planet of the Apes movie that's out right now. This was the first chapter in the Maze Runner trilogy. I really liked this movie. I was surprised. I really enjoyed this movie. I don't think it's great, but it was definitely entertaining. Unfortunately, what came after wasn't, but for this movie, I think as a standalone movie, this movie's pretty good. And then continuing that trend, we have Divergent. Again, the first chapter of another series of novels directed at the young adult crowd. And this one stars Shailene Woodley, Theo James, and Kate Winslet. Haven't seen it. My wife really enjoyed the books and the movies. Unfortunately, they never finished the series. Okay, now we're switching gears. We're going to move into drama. Back into drama with a little more action involved. And we have American Sniper, starring Bradley Cooper and Sienna Miller, directed by Clint Eastwood. This movie was a huge hit, critically and financially. And Bradley Cooper is phenomenal in this movie. This is based on an autobiography of a true person who is no longer with us. But again, excellent military drama. Okay, now we're into action. And we're back to my Jack Ryan collection for the last time. And this time we're talking about Jack Ryan, Shadow Recruit. Starring Chris Pine this time as Jack Ryan, Keira Knightley, Kevin Costner, and Kenneth Branagh. Directed by Kenneth Branagh. They tried to reboot the Jack Ryan series. That's all this is. He's a young agent in this movie. And again, it's an okay movie. It's definitely not the best in the series. Then we have Sabotage, starring all-star cast of Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sam Worthington, Terrence Howard. Great cast in this movie. Directed by David Ayer. This was the year that Schwarzenegger came back to Hollywood after being a politician for almost a decade. And he released a couple of movies that year. Neither one of them were very much of a hit. I actually really enjoyed this movie. It's dark, man, and it is pretty nasty. And Schwarzenegger gives a decent performance. Everybody gives really good performances. This is a real gritty action movie. If you've never seen it, I recommend it. It flew under the radar. It's not one of Schwarzenegger's best, but I think it's one of his best from the last 20 years, without a doubt. And then we've got The Equalizer, directed by Antoine Fuqua, and starring Denzel Washington, Chloe Grace Moretz, David Harbour, and Bill Pullman. This was based on a TV series from the 80s that Edward Woodward, I believe is his name. Woodward was the star of, a British British agent, retired. And of course they rebooted it into a movie series, and we are 3 installments strong. And they also rebooted it back into a TV show starring Queen Latifah. Regardless, all 3 of these movies are great. And then we've got John Wick, starring Keanu Reeves, Alfie Allen, and Bridget Monahan, and Ian McShane, of course. Directed by Chad Zaleski. This was the little unassuming action hit sleeper about the guy who goes after people for shooting his dog. And this movie was a sleeper hit. It wasn't a huge hit, but it was a sleeper hit. But it launched a franchise that has become huge, without a doubt. For years, I always said that when Keanu Reeves leaves this earth, on his obituary, the first thing it'll say is, played Neo in the Matrix films. It might say John Wick first now at this point. Great movie. But the best action movie that year, without a doubt in my eyes, and it might be the best action movie ever, The Raid 2. Again, directed by Gareth Edwards, and again starring, I hate names, Iko Uwais, and they brought back Mad Dog, but in the actor who played Mad Dog, but he's a different character this time. I said in the previous video, The Raid is such a great action movie, and I thought at the time it was one of the best action movies I ever saw. And I stand by that. This movie exceeds it in every way. They took that pure action flick and they expanded it into this saga that is just incredible to watch. These 2 characters right here, one uses a bat, the other one uses a hammer. Hammers. It's incredible. If you've never seen the 2 Raid movies, please, by all means, check them out. I love, love, love this movie. Now we're going to switch over into the graphic novels and superhero films. The first one, from my 300 double feature, the second installment, 300, Rise of an Empire, starring Sullivan Stapleton and Eva Green. And I forgot who directed it. It doesn't matter. This movie's okay. It doesn't hold a candle to the original. It doesn't even come close to the original. However, and this is going to probably get me in trouble with some of the ladies out there, Eva Green is unbelievably hot in this movie. I love Eva Green, and she chews into the scenery so much in this movie. You could tell she had a ball. She's the best thing about 300 Rise of the Empire, without a doubt. And speaking of Eva Green, Sin City, A Dame to Kill For. This was the second Sin City movie, and it's directed by Robert Rodriguez. And this time, again, starring Mickey Rourke, Jessica Alba, Josh Brolin, and Eva Green. And just like in 300 sequel, this sequel doesn't hold a candle to the original. However, Eva Green is unbelievably hot in this movie, and she is perfect in this movie for the character she plays. I absolutely love her in both of these films. If that makes me a sexist pig, so be it. But my God, is she's just incredible in both of these movies. The movies themselves, not so much. Eva Green, oh God, yes she is. Okay, now that I've calmed down a little bit, we're gonna keep going on with the superheroes, and we're gonna go to Captain America, the Winter Soldier, starring Chris Evans, Scarlett Johansson, Samuel L. Jackson, and Robert Redford. This movie's awesome. This is one of my favorite MCU movies. This movie plays like a conspiracy thriller from the 70s. Uh, and Robert Redford playing, the bad guy, so to speak. Sorry, no spoilers. But in this movie, I think it was almost a callback to, a flip side to 3 Days of the Condor. And yeah, Winter Soldier is a great, great movie. And then we've got, from my X-Men collection, and more specifically from the Beginnings trilogy, we have X-Men, Days of Future Past, directed by Bryan Singer, and starring the casts of both timelines of films. McAvoy, James Stewart, Ian McKellen, Michael Fassbender, the whole 9 yards. And a special cameo from Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. Out of all of the X-Men movies, and I am not including the Deadpool or the Logan movies, I'm talking about the actual X-Men movies. There's 6 of them. This one's my favorite. Days of Future Past is a great, great superhero film. It is so much fun. The plot's great. The effects are great. The action, everything. Without a doubt, my favorite X-Men movie. And superhero films were 3 for 3 that year, because the third one is my favorite of the bunch. Guardians of the Galaxy. Written and directed by James Gunn, and starring Chris Pratt, Zoe Saldana, Dave Bautista, the voices of Bradley Cooper, and Vin Diesel as Groot. I did not see this movie theatrically. I thought it looked ridiculously stupid. And I thought the MCU was just making a reach, because I had never read the comics. I never heard of the Guardians of the Galaxy. And even though James Gunn was attached and I really liked his output up until this point, I thought this movie was going to be a colossal waste of time. Man, was I wrong. I did see this on video as soon as it came out. Me and my stepson Cameron watched it together, and both of us were kicking ourselves in the ass for not going to see this theatrically. Guardians, awesome movie. Okay, now we're switching gears. We're slowly starting to move into horror, and I mean slowly, because this is certainly not a horror movie. Godzilla. Directed by Gareth Edwards, and starring Aaron Taylor Johnson, Elizabeth Olsen, Ken Watanabe, and Bryan Cranston. This started the Monsterverse that is out, still going to this day, 10 years later, with another Godzilla movie playing right now theatrically. At the time when I saw this movie, I did not like it at all. I thought it was boring. I was upset that you spend more time with the humans than you do with Godzilla. And in a way, I still stand by that, because I still don't really love this movie. But it has gotten a little bit better in my eyes through the years. And I gotta admit, I was a little bit harsh on it originally. Compared to the Godzilla movie from the 90s, this thing's great, okay? But I do prefer everything in the Monsterverse that came after this. But as it is, I don't hate Godzilla. I just don't love it. Okay, now we're definitely moving into horror. We're back to my rec set with the 4th installment, Apocalypse. From Spain, of course. And I have not seen this movie. This one is not done by the 2 guys that were responsible for the first 3. I have heard really bad things about this movie, to be honest, but Again, I am withholding judgment until I actually do watch it. Then we have The Purge, Anarchy. It's the second installment in the Purge saga, directed by James DeMonaco again, I believe, yes. And this time starring Frank Grillo and Michael T. Williamson. Is Michael T. Williamson in this one, or is it the third one? I get confused. He's in the third one. This one's got, what's his face from The Wire? Never mind. Anarchy's a lot of fun. I like it a lot better than the original one. It's still not my favorite in the series, but it is. It's a lot of fun. And then we've got a couple of weird ones for you. And it doesn't get much weirder than this. Tusk. Written and directed by Kevin Smith. And starring Justin Long, Michael Parks, and Haley Joel Osment. Yep, this is the movie about a guy who turns a guy into a walrus. Yeah, I said that. He turns a guy into a walrus. And this has one of the funniest lines ever. I don't want to die in Canada. Really bizarre movie. Really disgusting movie. It's an acquired taste. And then we have Horns. Directed by Alexandre Aja. And starring Daniel Radcliffe, Max Minghella, Juno Temple, James Remar, and Heather Graham. This is based on a novel from Joe Hill. And if you don't know who Joe Hill is, he is the son of Stephen King. And he is a very good author, very popular author in his own right. This is a wild movie, man. It's kind of a dark comedy more than a horror movie. But this was definitely the first thing I ever saw Daniel Radcliffe in that didn't involve him being Harry Potter. And he's good in this. He's really good in this. Not for everybody, but again, I like it. And then we have Oculus. Directed by Mike Flanagan. And starring Katie Sackhoff, Karen Gillan, and what's his name? Rory Cochrane. That's his name. This was the first movie I ever saw that had anything to do with Mike Flanagan. I know he did have a movie that came out before this called Hush, which I saw afterwards, and that's a really good movie too. But this movie is creepy as hell, man. It's about a haunted mirror. Don't want to go too far into it, but if you've never seen Oculus, check it out. It's a really, really cool movie. But now we're switching over to science fiction because 2014 had some great science fiction. The first one on the list, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Directed by Matt Reeves and starring Andy Serkis, Gary Oldman, and Jason Clarke. I just did a ranking of the Planet of the Apes videos. This one came in at number 1. I absolutely love this film. Then we have Interstellar. Directed by Christopher Nolan and starring Matthew McConaughey, Anne Hathaway, and Matt Damon. Again, great movie. First time I saw it, I didn't really like it. I thought it was boring. It kind of went over my head. Saw it again. Now I love it. Great movie. Then we have Snowpiercer. Directed by Bong Joon-ho, starring Chris Evans in what I feel is his best performance that I've ever seen him in. And I like Chris Evans, but he's phenomenal in this movie. Tilda Swinton, who is also phenomenal in this movie, and Ed Harris. I love Snowpiercer. Eventually, I am definitely going to upgrade this to Blu-ray. This movie is fantastic in every way. But I saved this one for last. Edge of Tomorrow, or Live, Die, Repeat, or Live, Die, Repeat, Edge of Tomorrow, because quite frankly, they've changed the title of this movie so many goddamn times. You would think that there really was a time loop going on. Directed by Doug Liman and starring Tom Cruise, Emily Blunt, and the late great Bill Paxton. Let me just start right now. I love this movie. I absolutely love it. I think this is one of Tom Cruise's most entertaining movies, and I think it's one of his best performances. I went and saw this movie with my, now wife. She was my girlfriend at the time, her son, and one of her friends. And her friend did not want to go see this movie because she, and I quote, hated Tom Cruise for whatever reason. I don't know why. But she went in with us. All four of us loved this movie, but I think she loved it most of all. And the reason why, she said she got to see Tom Cruise die about 150 times. It's true. This movie is. It's like a cross between Starship Troopers and Groundhog Day. But my God, is this movie fun. It is just so great. They've been talking for years about making a sequel to it. And because of all the Mission Impossible movies, Tom Cruise hasn't been able to fit it into his schedule. I kind of hope they don't, because as far as I'm concerned, this movie is just perfect the way it is, and it doesn't need a continuation. And that's the way we're going to end 2014. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, please give me a thumbs up, a possible subscribe, and leave those comments below. I would love to hear from you, and we'll see you on the next one.